my now wife, the first Christmas present she ever gave me was Wayne Gretzky Hockey 3, made by Bethesda Softworks. And I liked the game, I looked at the address in the back of the box, and I went, huh, this place is on my way back to school. It's right off the road. So on my way back from semester break, I literally just drove to the office and knocked on the door and said, I want to work here one day. And pestered them until that came true.
I was a terrible artist, I was a terrible programmer, but I wasn't going to let that stop me, and so figured out a way to make my own games, and started off with kind of construction sets for adventure games, and eventually learned Visual Basic and moved on from there and started making games like Jazz Jackrabbit and eventually Unreal.
I was actually playing Syndicate, the original Syndicate, with my friend, and he bet me that I couldn't get a job in the games industry. And there and then I phoned them up and I said, can I get the address of Bullfrog, sent in my resume as a 15-year-old, and ended up making tea for them that summer.
How I got started, let me think if I can think of a better story than what actually happened.
I began to write games on teletypes with strips of paper tape, and I was one of the very earliest people with this fascination for computers. And then when personal computers finally did come out in '77, I immediately began to write fantasy games that ultimately became the Ultima series shortly thereafter.
I saw this job listing at LucasArts, and they wanted programmers who could write, and I was like, aha! I would like to work on Skywalker Ranch, because I really liked Ballblazer. And so that's how it all started.
I was down to my last $1,000. That had to cover my rent, for my office, for my house. Al Hastings was sleeping on my couch. I mean, we were about to go out of business, and the last place we went was Universal Interactive Studios, and met a guy named Mark Cerny. And he looked at us and the demo that we had done, and mostly Al's technology, and said, all right, you guys are talented, we'll give you a 3-game deal.
I had a cousin who knew some friends that were kind of working on games. Ray and I were avid players all through medical school, I mean, our whole lives. But that's kind of when we got to know each other. And we looked at the game they were working on, and they were quite good. And we thought this was, hey, let's give this a shot. Let's actually try and start making games and building stuff together. And that eventually turned into our first game, Shattered Steel, and we've been going ever since.
I worked for 3 board game companies, and I found out that after the 3rd one that there was a computer game company in the same city, Microprose. It took me a year of lobbying, and they finally hired me. I said, you got programmers and artists, you don't have any game designers, you should hire me, I'm a game designer. And that finally worked, and that was how I got started.
Through a connection that I had, I got a job as a programmer for a mobile game company, which was sort of a back door that taught me all the ins and outs about production, game development, working with different departments, etc. That became the perfect stepping stone to eventually get a job at Ubisoft.
I started my career at the Nevada test site, which is about 60 miles north of here. So I'm one of the people involved in 2 of the scourges of the 20th century, video games and nuclear weapons.
The game that sort of started me as being a fan of PC games was Wolf 3D, and id made Wolf 3D, of course, and then come to find out they were a client of mine back when I was in public accounting, and I had short hair and wore a tie and a wool suit and all that stuff. And I mean, I got to know the guys. I had an opportunity to come work with the company. They invited me, and how could I say no?
So I got my first job soldering cables and copying discs and repairing Apple IIs, and didn't actually go there to be in the video game business. I went to be a serious computer scientist. The one job in the business I've probably never done.
I liked medicine, but I love video games. And I find medicine really fun because I did emergency medicine for a number of years and kind of less and less of it, and more BioWare as BioWare grew. But it's been a great ride.